Well, hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a Sunday Stuff and Things. And on this Sunday Stuff and Things, we have stuff and things to talk about, including upcoming videos, things you can look forward to on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon. We'll talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. If you lived in the US, you would have celebrated, hopefully, maybe, Thanksgiving this last weekend. We'll talk a little bit about mine. I want to talk about metering light in the fall/winter in the Pacific Northwest and just how freaking dark it is here all the time. It's kind of driving me crazy. So we'll get into that a little bit, some photography related stuff. Then of course, we'll get into your questions, comments, and feedback in hashtag askstuffandthings. And we'll close out the show as usual with the Patreon shout outs and updates. Let's get into it. Ugh. It's a little chilly this morning, gang, but it's not crazily windy and it's not raining, and it's about as bright as it has been for weeks here, it seems. What is it right now? It's probably about 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was trying to get better at working out what that is Celsius. So if you take 38, take away 32, you got 6. Multiply that by 0.555555555. So it's a little over 3 degrees, right? Yeah. It's about 3 degrees Celsius, a little bit over 3 degrees Celsius. So kind of chilly, not horrible. It should get into the 40s maybe later today. But what can you look forward to? I don't know why I gave you the weather report, but that's why I'm shivering. What can you look forward to on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon? Well, this coming week on YouTube and on Patreon, we will have the Saddleback Leather Italian Casual belt review. I reviewed the Saddleback front pocket ID wallet almost or over 11 years ago, one of the first reviews I ever did on the channel. And Saddleback recently sent me a belt and a wallet, and I'll be reviewing both of them on the channel, separate videos. So I still use that front pocket ID wallet every single day. It is my wallet. It has been my wallet for the past 11 years. It's held up amazingly well. It has a 100-year warranty. So good stuff, and the belt seems just as good as that wallet. So that review will be coming up this week. The week after that, exclusive to Patreon, will be the Cornell & Diehl King Cake First Impressions video. Very interesting blend, a very aromatic blend. So not something that I would typically enjoy, but stay tuned for that. And then the week after that on YouTube and on Patreon, we'll have the Saddleback Leather Major League Baseball Series Seattle Mariners bifold wallet. So very cool. If you're a baseball fan, they have stuff for every team in the league, and they have all sorts of products. And they sent me the bifold wallet to check out. So we'll be doing a review of that. Have more photography stuff coming up on the channel too, so don't worry. The week after that, we'll have the King Cake review, the full review on Patreon only. And then, like I said, I felt like I needed to get these Saddleback Leather videos done quickly because they sent them to me and I didn't want to put them off for weeks and weeks and weeks. And especially the wallet, because it was kind of baseball season dependent, and the baseball season is over now. My coffee. So I wanted to get that review done, but don't worry. We'll have all sorts of other good stuff, photography stuff, pipe stuff on exclusive to Patreon. Lots of other good stuff coming up on both YouTube and on Patreon. I am sorry, but my coffee mug keeps falling down, so that is why I'm slightly distracted. Stay tuned for all the good stuff coming up on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon. Yes, so it was Thanksgiving last weekend, or no, this weekend. What day is it? Yeah, on Thursday, it was Thanksgiving. So I actually had a 4-day weekend, which is pretty amazing. And Thanksgiving was fun. We do, since I come from a broken home, my parents got divorced after I was already an adult, so it didn't have that much of an effect. But my dad remarried, and so I have step-siblings on my dad's side. And every other year we do my mom's side, the siblings, my full-blooded siblings do my mom's side one year, my dad's side the next year for Thanksgiving. And so this year it was for my dad. And it was cool because my stepsister has a new baby. Well, she's actually almost a year old now. And I had only met her when she was just like, you know, when babies are first born, they're just these little slugs and they can't really do anything. And so I'd met her during that period, but I got to see her on Thursday and she's toddling around now. She seems way too little to walk around. How old are babies when they start walking? Because she's not even a year old yet, and she's toddling all over the place. But she was super funny and super cute. And I don't know. I don't have a child. I don't have a wife. I don't have a girlfriend or any prospects of having a wife anytime soon. But I like babies. I like kids, and I like to play with them. And so I had fun with her. It was fun to see all the family and everything, but especially the little baby. And it was funny because my older brother has this tiny little dog who is super old. I think he's like 15 years old. He's literally like this big. He is one of the smallest dogs you could imagine and one of the least threatening dogs you could possibly imagine. And she was terrified of this dog. So she'd be, sitting on the ground, playing with her toys or whatever. And the little dog would approach. And if she saw him coming near her, she would she would do this like very dramatic look away and kind of like, and just start screaming. And it's really funny because apparently she doesn't mind cats, but she hates dogs. And even though he's smaller than a cat, she still was as frightened of him as she would be of any other like full-size dog. And so I decided to make it my mission that night to get her used to the dog. And so I just like would grab her, and she was totally fine with me. Like, I'm basically a stranger, but I would just grab her and pick her up. And she was like, And so I would carry her around and stuff and talk to her and everything. And then I would slowly like get closer and closer to the dog. And I finally got to the point where, I got closer and closer, and I was being encouraging of her and not, sometimes kids will feed off your energy. So if they freak out and then you are like, oh no, what's wrong? Then they just kind of continue freaking out, kind of like with dogs too. And so I was just very calm, like, yeah, look, it's a puppy. Look at the puppy. And then we finally got to the point where she reached out her little finger, like in E.T., and touched his nose. And then she was very interested in him. And so I had her sitting next to the dog on the couch, and she was actually petting the dog. So I think that's good. It was really fun to see all the family members and everything. And I guess just a month away from Christmas, so I'll be seeing more family soon. Hopefully you guys got to have a good time with your family as well, if you were living in the U.S. and celebrating Thanksgiving. I know Canada does Thanksgiving, but I can't remember when. They copy all our holidays. And then, most of you do Christmas, or many of you, if you live in a European country. So yeah, lots of good family stuff coming up. I hope you enjoy your time with your family. So right now, it is 10:20 in the morning. It's about as light as it has been around here in Bellingham, Washington for the last couple weeks. And I am metering with 400 speed film with a baseline of 1/500 as my shutter speed. So I don't know how in depth we want to get with this, but if you're thinking about Sunny 16, the rule of thumb with Sunny 16 is a way of metering light with a film camera that does not have a light meter on it, like my Leica M4. If you put 400 speed film in this camera, you say, okay, I've got 400 speed film in here. I'm going to set the shutter speed at 1/500 because that's the reciprocal of your speed. So if I had a 200 speed film, I would go 1/250. If I had 100 speed film, I'd go 1/125. It's just as close as you can get to the reciprocal of your film speed. So you think about that as your baseline. So 1/500 with 400 speed film. If it were sunny and bright, the sunny 16 rule says that your aperture would be at f16. So aperture here at f16 with a shutter speed of 1/500. Now in the Pacific Northwest in Bellingham, Washington, during the height of summer, the sunniest, hottest days, if I ever metered those days, it was never at f16. I think it's just because we're so far north, the sun is never that bright. So I would usually be, the baseline would be 1/500 at f11. But I just think in my head, when I'm running around metering with my camera, I think of the baseline as f16 at 1/500. And so when I meter, I have all that set in my light meter. I'm stuck on my camera strap here. So if you can see in here, I've got the camera shutter speed set at 1/500. I have the film speed set at 400, so the ISO. And then right now I'm metering at f4. So that is 4 stops down from my baseline of F16. So if you think about it, you've got F16, F11, 8, 5.6, and 4 as you're going down with your aperture. So in my head, I just think of that as -4 stops. And then I will correct the shutter speed / aperture to be -4. So I might go 1, 2 stops from 16 to F8, and then 1, 2 stops from 500 to 1/125. So on a day like this, with this kind of light, I might be shooting F8 at 1/125. So that's how you meter. I don't typically have this light meter out with me all the time. I'll just get like a baseline, oh, what are we looking like right now? And then I will adjust my shutter speed and my aperture, and I'll just kind of do that throughout the day. But the sunny 16 rule of thumb is that if it's a bright sunny day, it's F16. That's never the case here. I've never had F16 on my meter. It's always been F11 on a bright sunny day, just because we're in the Pacific Northwest, we're really far north, and it just never seemed. Maybe if I was in California or in the Mediterranean or something, it would be F16, but it's not here. And then typically the rule of thumb is that if it's bright sunny day, it's 16. If it's kind of a hazy, if there's a little bit of haze in the sky, you're F11. So you're 1 stop minus from your baseline. If it's cloudy but not completely overcast, you'd be F8. And then a completely overcast day would be F5.6. Today, it is completely overcast, but I am metering at F4. So I'm actually metering 4 stops down instead of the 3 stops down that it would typically be. But recently, basically since fall started, or I guess into October, when I go out, I'm typically like metering at F2, sometimes F1.4 during the day when it's just cloudy. It's so dark around here in the fall and the winter. So the sunny 16 rule of thumb, where it's like, oh, if it's a completely overcast day, you're going to be metering at F5.6. That does not apply here in the Pacific Northwest. And it has been so hard to do film photography here this time of year because, you know, if I get off early from work, I might be home by 3 or 3:30 or something. Let's say we started early and we got done with the work we had to do that day. I have less than an hour of daylight left when that is the case, because it starts getting dark this time of year at 4 o'clock. Like, it'll be dark by 4:15. And so I have barely an hour of sunlight. I run outside with my camera and my gear, and then I meter and I'm at like F2 or F1.4. And if I'm, you know, 7 stops down from my baseline, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe to like F4, and then 5, 6, 7. I'm looking at F4 with a shutter speed of 1/60. And that doesn't really work for street photography, because a lot of the times you're trying to do zone focusing where you have a wider aperture like F8 or F11, and you're setting your focus at around 7 feet or 2 meters or 1.5 meters, around there. And then you don't have to critical focus. You can just go up, you snap a picture. You have a fast enough shutter speed that you're going to get people in focus. You're going to freeze the motion, and you have a wide or a narrow enough aperture that you're going to get most of what you're looking at in focus. When I have to shoot at F4 at 1/60, the shutter speed isn't fast enough and the aperture is not narrow enough. And it just makes it super difficult this time of year. And I've been thinking of maybe incorporating the flash. I've got this little, I don't have it with me right now, but I've got that little Sunpack Auto 101 flash. But that just puts a whole new spin on things where you're flashing people with a flash, and it just makes it more obtrusive and more kind of rude and weird. So I don't know. It's been really tough to use my film camera this time of year. And I'm just curious, any of you out there who are watching, if you do street photography or documentary style photography with film, I do black and white. How are you shooting this time of year? If you live in a place like me where it is dark, very, very dark for, 7, 8, 9 months in a row, how do you typically go about trying to take photographs in a situation like this? It's tough. I thought there was some slight possibility that the sun might come out today. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I would love it if it did, but lately I've just been having to shoot digital more because I can do autofocus and I can still have my aperture at like f4 or even f2.8 and I can still get my images in focus and it's not a problem. And I just have way more ISO. I could be shooting at like 3200 ISO and still get good shots. You're a lot more limited when you're doing film, and especially when it's just so freaking dark all the time. It's driving me crazy. So let me know in the comments below how you deal with this dark time of year if you live in a place like I do. All right, gang, but now it is time for hashtag #AskStuffandThings. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like it answered on the Sunday Stuff and Things, you can tweet at SAT Bradley with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings, but you probably shouldn't because nobody does and I never read X anyway. Or if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me via Patreon and go right to the front of the line, or you can hit that super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line. Or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback in the comment section of my YouTube videos. We have one from @Pryhosum who says, I'd enjoyed your pipe tea reviews for years. Got really busy for a year and came back and it looks like you've hung it all up. All the best. I keep getting comments like this. I know that not everyone is watching every video, and people who have kind of stepped out for a while and then come back, you might not have heard this, but I have not hung it all up. I am still posting all those videos. They just have to go to Patreon now. So if you guys are watching the Sunday Stuff and Things, you probably know this already. But for people like Pryhosum, and I had several of these comments this week, look in the comment section or look in the video description below. There is a link to Patreon. I am building up an archive of all the old pipe tea reviews on Patreon, and then all the new pipe stuff is going on Patreon. As I just mentioned, there are 2 brand new videos coming up, the first impressions video and the full review video for Cornell & Diehl King Cake. So still happening. It just has to happen on Patreon. Next, we have some feedback from last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. This is from @SethPotterPhoto, who says, maybe it's because I live in the Midwest, but I've always heard the word gut. So I was talking about these buzzwords that all of a sudden get really popular and how everyone keeps talking about their gut and gut health recently. And Seth says, as far as a word that's irritating, I've got more of a phrase, no cap. Yes, I've heard that. It means I'm not lying, basically. Apparently that means, as Seth Potter says, I'm not lying. I just don't get it, I guess. 28mm is my overall favorite desert island focal length, but for walking around street type photography, I can hardly use it. I much prefer 35mm or 50mm. 80mm is a nice choice too on occasion. So I was talking about favorite focal lengths for walking around lens, just everyday all-purpose lens. So a lot of interesting points here. We'll get into the next comment actually when we talk about the word gut. So we'll answer that from with that comment. But yeah, no cap. I don't mind things that, like, it's okay if people have their own little code phrases or whatever that people say. Like when I was a little kid, we said weird things. What bothers me is when the rest of the culture just decides like, oh, this is what we're going to say now. And it's like everybody got a memo that I didn't get. I don't know. It's just strange, especially when adults, somebody in their 50s, if I heard like a soccer mom seriously in a sentence say, no cap, when it would just seem weird. And that's what people do with some of these buzzwords that I was talking about. And then, yeah, like I mentioned in that last video, 35mm is my walking around everyday lens. I think it works great for that. So continuing on with gut, @Quantum Tarsus says, the term gut is a legitimate medical term, one which I use on a daily basis. It's not our fault that you have certain negative connotations associated with the word. Perhaps it has more to do with influencers co-opting the term, winky face. So yeah, and I wasn't saying that these aren't real words. The thing that was bothering me is just how suddenly everyone is saying them, and in ways that they didn't used to say them or use them. So I know gut is an actual word and an actual term, but a few years ago, nobody was saying my gut health, your gut fauna. It's like gut has just become this weird buzzword, and I hear it on advertisements all the time. So that's the only thing that's bugging me. Next, @Martin Pearson says, colorway is a manufacturing term and has been around for about 50 years or more. Also, when someone is manipulating a photograph, it's called editing. Editing means reducing a number of photos down to fewer. That is what editing means. So I think you're saying that when people are talking about, you know, changing the color balance or the color grade or doing things with contrast and stuff on a photograph, they call that editing, but you're saying it shouldn't be called editing, it should be called manipulating. Editing means, you know, editing down the amount of photographs, or if you're editing film, you're cutting the film and splicing it together. So I understand what you're saying there. If a photo is being manipulated to alter contrast or brightness, etc., that is manipulation. So yeah, I can see where you might be annoyed that people are ascribing a term to something that didn't used to mean that thing, but that's, I don't mind as much when things have become, the usage of a term is so ubiquitous that that's just what the thing is now. But I can see how that could bother you. But yeah, editing technically wouldn't necessarily be manipulating the photograph. And colorway, yes, I do know that colorway is something that was used, I think in like wallpaper or fabrics, things like that in those industries. But again, it's just that suddenly everyone is using it to talk about shoes or clothing. And they didn't used to do that. It used to be these shoes come in these colors or this combination of colors. And now it's all, look at this colorway. I really like this colorway. Nobody used to say that a long time ago. And by nobody, I mean that nobody who was posting videos on social media or reviewing shoes on YouTube. People never said colorway until recently. Next, we have at Ledger and Lace, who says, my nephew's a Zoomer. He has a whole vocabulary that makes no sense to my old lady ears. I think you could add a rant section to your Sunday videos. Call it a brant, like a Brad rant. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I think that just kind of happens naturally every once in a while in some of my videos. And then we have a little bit of feedback from the GLP's Abingdon review. Ortzi Landa says, sounds delicious. Sadly, it's not available in Europe. And then we had kind of a more of a thread on that comment section where I thought that most GLP's blends were not available in Europe, because that's what I had heard years ago. But apparently some are now, but Abingdon wasn't. Abingdon wasn't one that he was able to get in Europe. But from what it sounds like, there's some blends available in Europe, some are available in the UK. So it sounds like the GLP's blends are penetrating a little bit more into Europe, which is cool, because I think they have some really, really fantastic blends. Thank you for all that feedback. Please keep it coming in. It really helps make the show go. But now, gang, it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support Stuff and Things on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it is much appreciated. It's basically the way I am able to keep making these videos. So if you like anything on Stuff and Things YouTube or Stuff and Things Patreon, your support on Patreon keeps making it possible for me to keep making this stuff. Also, if you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to the YouTube videos early and ad-free. And there is a whole archive of old pipe stuff that used to be on YouTube that is now being moved over to Patreon. We have dozens and dozens of the old pipe reviews that are built up in the From the Archives or the Archives playlist on Patreon. And then all the new pipe stuff goes on to Patreon as well. So $5 a month gets you in. You have access to all that good stuff. And every week we like to shout out those who support Stuff and Things at $25 or more a month. The producers of Stuff and Things. People like Jason Buckner, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, The Friendly Piper, GreatGrol, Glenn, Just Glenn, David Severin, Nicholas James, Kyle Whitmore, Mr. Gibson, Chris Caughey, and Ryan McFadin. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support Stuff and Things at $100 a month. People like stolid and dependable Bob Magee. And we'll never forget our dearly departed friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, what can you look forward to exclusively on Stuff and Things Patreon this week? Well, we will have the Saddleback Leather Italian Casual belt review early and ad-free on Monday on Patreon. It premieres on Wednesday on YouTube. But then on Thursday, we have a From the Archive episode, and it is Germain's King Charles smoking mixture. So, which Charles was that? It's obviously not the current King Charles. I don't know which, I think it's like 17th century King Charles, whichever King Charles that was. I don't know my English monarchs very well. But this is an interesting blend. I reviewed this originally in March 2nd of 2016. And it's a blend that's kind of hard to get if you live in the US, so that's why it's always kind of an event to review a Germain blend on the channel, and there was a period where I was really focusing on trying to get Germain blends in. So I had several in a row that I was able to procure, and King Charles Smoking Mixture is a good one and one that you should check out. That'll be on Thursday on Patreon. Lots of other good stuff coming up on both YouTube and Patreon. We'll have those Saddleback reviews like I mentioned. We have the first impressions and full review of Cornell & Diehl King Cake. Gonna have more photo stuff for sure. If you haven't checked out my photo Instagram, you should definitely do that. It is at Bradley A. Victor on Instagram. And then I have a website that is bradleyavictor.com. Be sure to check that out as well. I don't call that out as enough. But until next time, until we meet again, I'm your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a Sunday Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.